Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining this County Council virtual town hall meeting. We're grateful for your participation and look forward to hearing your questions.
Recording in progress.
In addition to our council members, we have representatives from Montgomery County Public Schools, the county's Health and Human Services Department, as well as planning staff here at the council to answer any questions you might have. Each of these groups will be presenting updates from their respective offices on the status of COVID-19 here in the county, the latest safety protocols, as well as the newest information on the Thrive Montgomery 2050 plan. We will be taking some live questions from residents tonight, as well as questions sent through the Q&A function. If you have a question, please send it there and we will do our best to get you an answer.
Buenas tardes a todos y a todas. Gracias por haberse unido a esta sesión abierta virtual del Consejo. Agradecemos su participación y estaremos esperando escuchar sus preguntas. Además de los miembros del Consejo, tenemos representantes del Montgomery County Public School, las escuelas públicas del condado, el Departamento de Salud y Servicios Humanos del departamento, como también el personal de planificación aquí en el consejo, aquí tenemos en el consejo, que puedan responder a sus preguntas, las preguntas que puedan tener. Cada uno de estos grupos estarán presentando actualizaciones desde sus respectivas dependencias acerca del estatus del COVID-19 aquí en el condado, los protocolos más recientes, como también la información más nueva acerca del plan 2050 de Thrive Montgomery. Estaremos aceptando algunas preguntas en vivo de los residentes esta noche, como también preguntas enviadas por el programa de el sistema de preguntas y respuestas. Si tiene una pregunta, por favor, envíanoslo por este medio y haremos lo mejor para hacerles llegar una respuesta.
Tonight, we are piloting live captioning in Spanish for the duration of the town hall. To enable live captioning in Zoom, select the CC icon at the bottom of your screen in Zoom for closed captioning. Diane Lavoie will also provide interpretation services on the main broadcast for those residents who would like to answer their questions live in Spanish.
Esta noche estaremos probando los subtítulos en español durante toda la sesión de la reunión. Para usar los subtítulos en Zoom, por favor seleccione el CC, el icono, en la parte inferior de su pantalla para que designa los closed captioning. Diane Lavoie, eso soy yo, estaremos presentando la interpretación en el programa principal para aquellos residentes que desean hacer sus preguntas en vivo en español.
Now I will turn it over to Council President Tom Hooker for some opening remarks in addition to introducing his council colleagues. Mr. President.
Ahora pasaré la palabra al presidente del Consejo, Tom Hooker, para algunos comentarios de apertura y para la presentación de sus colegas del Consejo.
Good evening, everyone. I want to thank you all for joining us at our virtual community town hall. I'm Tom Hooker. I'm the president of the County Council. I also chair our Transportation and Environment Committee, and I serve on the Public Safety Committee.
Good evening, everyone. My name is I'm the Council Vice President, Gabe Albornoz. And
I'm sorry, Gabe. I was pausing for Diane's intro. So Diane, should I stop each time or not?
I'm happy to interpret, but I understood I was not to interpret at this point.
Great. Okay, they're working. Sorry to be confused.
Mr. President, we do have the live Spanish captioning tonight, which is a pilot that we're trying tonight so that folks can turn on the captioning and read in Spanish what you are saying.
It started now. Great. Terrific. We're all so glad to be with you tonight. The last 17 months have been an incredible struggle. Last year, our lives were flipped upside down. Not only were we dealing with the worst health crisis in 100 years and the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression, even today, we continue to deal with profound public health and economic impacts. We've all been impacted by COVID in some shape or form, but that did not deter the council from working tirelessly to meet the needs of our residents and our businesses. So I want to thank our residents and businesses for your resiliency, and I want to thank my colleagues for all of your leadership over the last 17 months. There is still much more work to do to fully put this pandemic behind us. And even with that, we will have to continue to address our long-term impacts. However, we are moving in the right direction. And with that said, I do want to provide you with a very brief update on some of the council's work recently. First, just yesterday, the council voted unanimously to extend free bus service, the holiday bus fare for ride-on buses until January. We received a proposal to raise bus fares, but the council unanimously decided to keep them free. During a pandemic and a recession is the worst possible time to raise bus fares. Second, the council has begun our work on the Climate Action Plan and Thrive 2050. And just yesterday, we passed unanimously a green construction code to make sure our new buildings are built to high standards of energy efficiency. Third, in regards to COVID assistance, the council distributed $255 million. Those funds were used for rental assistance, business assistance, to support food security efforts, to establish public health programs, and much more. And most notably, in May, the council passed a budget that's responsive and responsible. It's responsive because it addresses the widespread needs of our residents, including needs that have been unmet for years, including more money for mental health, for students, for housing, for transit riders, and for pedestrians and cyclists, as well as our residents experiencing homelessness. And it's responsible because it doesn't raise our taxes, and it does replenish our reserves. In fact, I just met with the 3 bond rating agencies from in New York, and they all decided to retain Montgomery County's AAA bond rating, which allows us to borrow money at the lowest possible rate and is a great endorsement of our fiscal policies. Those are just some of the things that council has been working on. We have a full agenda for the rest of the year. And with your support and feedback, we can make great strides to meet our goals and overcome the pandemic. Going back to tonight's agenda, I'm joined by all my council colleagues who you'll meet in a minute, as well as the following special guests who have joined us to provide brief updates or to answer your questions. We have Dr. Raymond Kroll and Acting Health Officer James Bridgers from the Department of Health and Human Services. We have Jimmy DeAndrea, the Chief of Staff, and Rochelle Rubin, the Chief of Teaching and Learning in Schools, and Jeannie Dawson, and the Chief of Finance and Operations, all from our Montgomery County Public Schools. We have Planning Director Gwen Wright and Senior Legislative Analyst Pam Dunn from our Planning Department and from the council staff. And we have from the Redistricting Commission Chair Mariana Cordier and Vice Chair Arthur Edmonds. We're going to run through introductions very quickly to leave time for questions from residents and 3 brief updates from each of those groups. Like most of our town halls, we have many questions to address, but I want to remind everyone, even if we don't get to your question live tonight, we have a record of each and every question that was submitted during the public hearing sign-up process, and we will get back to you. I also want to remind colleagues, we'll try to limit answers to 1 council member for each question to keep the conversation moving, and we'll try to be considerate of one another to ask questions. We ask you all to ask questions and not give speeches, and to make your questions as succinct as possible. So I'll turn it over to my council colleagues for introductions in alphabetical order. Council Vice President Albornoz.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, everyone. I am Council Vice President Gabe Albornoz in my first term on the County Council as one of your 4 at-large members. I also serve as chair of the Health and Human Services Committee, and I'm honored to serve on the Public Safety Committee as well. I look forward to answering your questions this evening and just greatly appreciate all the work of everyone that put tonight's important event together, and just it's such an honor and privilege to continue to serve with all of my colleagues on the council.
Councilmember Friedtson.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Andrew Friedtson. I have the privilege and honor of representing District 1 on the County Council. That's Western and Southwestern Montgomery County, the place where I was so lucky to grow up in. I serve on the Planning, Housing, Economic Development Committee and the Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee, and also serve as the Council's lead for Parks. Great to be here this evening. Look forward to hearing your questions.
Councilmember Glass.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Evan Glass. I'm one of your at-large members of the council. I serve on the Health and Human Services Committee, where I am the council's lead on homelessness and vulnerable communities. And I just want to say thank you to every single one of you, and especially to the 98.1% of eligible residents who have gotten vaccinated or at least gotten one dose of the vaccine. Thank you all.
Councilmember Jawando.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Will Jawando. I'm an at-large council member, one of the four, which means, and is a fancy way of saying we get to represent all 1.052 million people, probably an undercount, so over 1 million people with the new census numbers. I'm on the Planning, Housing, Economic Development Committee, and I serve on the Education and Culture Committee, where I'm the lead for libraries. And it's great to be with you. It's an honor to represent my hometown. I'm a civil rights lawyer by training, and look forward to answering your questions tonight.
Member Katz.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sidney Katz. I have the honor and privilege of being the council member for the 3rd District of Montgomery County. I am the chair of the Public Safety Committee. I serve on the Government Operations Committee. I sincerely appreciate everyone being with us this evening. Thank you.
Councilmember Navarro.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nancy Navarro. I am honored to represent District 4, which is basically the mid part of the county. I chair the Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee, and I also am a member of the Education and Culture Committee. I had the honor of serving on the Board of Education from 2004 to 2009, and I want to thank all of our residents for your patience, for your resiliency, and for working collaboratively and collectively to make sure that we could ride this terrible pandemic. We're not out of the woods, but you have made a lot of progress, and I just want to say thank you. Muchísimas gracias.
Councilmember Rice.
Thank you very much. Craig Rice, council member representing District 2, which is the majority of the Up-County area, starting with Montgomery Village and going all the way up to the Frederick County line. I chair our Education and Culture Committee and am a member of our Health and Human Services Committee, and look forward to the conversation this evening.
Councilmember Reamer.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Hans Reamer, and I'm also one of your 4 at-large members of the Montgomery County Council. I was first elected in 2010, and it's been my tremendous honor to serve on your behalf, representing you for these many years. And as an at-large member, it's really thrilling to be able to work through challenging issues in communities all across Montgomery County. And I'm really pleased to be here tonight. It has indeed been a tough time through this pandemic, and really never a more important time for us all as a community to pull together and to be in public service. So I look forward to our discussion tonight. Thanks.
Thank you. So now I would like to turn it over to Department of Health and Human Services Director, Dr. Raymond Kroll, and Acting Health Officer, Dr. James Bridgers, to provide a public health update.
Good evening, Council President Reamer. Sorry, I'm looking at Hans and talking to you. Sorry.
It's a compliment.
We'll talk about that later. So good evening, everyone. It is a pleasure to be with you all. I'm happy to be here this evening to be part of this event. And pleased to say that throughout 20 months, HHS, the county executive, the county council have partnered and supported each other and worked with countless partners to provide food, shelter, rental assistance, cash assistance, and support the health and well-being of Montgomery County's residents. And of course, testing and vaccination have been a part of that process throughout this year. And we've gone from 34 tests in an envelope over a year and a half ago to a point where we were doing 15,000 tests a week at the beginning of this year, And then we turned our attention to vaccinations, and you've seen the results. And thank you to the community who came out and got vaccinated when it was made available to them. Now, of course, we are preparing for boosters and third shots, and for vaccinating in the not too distant future children, 5 to 12-year-old children. And I think we've also been partnering with Montgomery County Public Schools to on a safe return to in-classroom study and academics for our students. I think and the last thing that's a good point for me is a message, is a good thing for me. A positive note is that we are starting up our holiday giving campaign again to begin to raise resources and provide gifts and food for folks at the holiday season, as we have done every year for the last year. So no matter what else is going on, the work with this virus, the work has continued across HHS and across the county. So I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to turn this over to Dr. James Bridgers, our acting health officer, who has stepped into a really important and vital role and has done so with energy and vigor and has made sure that we have kept moving. So Dr. Bridgers, to talk to us about testing and vaccination in Montgomery County and a COVID update.
Thank you, Dr. Kroll, and thank you, council members, for entrusting me with the health and wellness of the county. As Councilmember Glass indicated, I want to applaud Montgomery County for being the #1 county in getting folks vaccinated who are 12 years and older. That's 83% of counties have received at least one dose, and 75% of counties have received either both series of the Pfizer and Moderna or the one-shot Johnson & Johnson. We continue to see this in our decrease and stabilization of our hospital rates. Those individuals who present in our emergency room, our data are trending downward. Our case rate as of today was 10.85 per 100,000, and our test positivity was 2.01%. We are the lowest county for our case rate and test positivity rate in the state of Maryland. We haven't seen as many breakthrough cases. Over the past 4 weeks, we've seen 1,298 post-vaccination or breakthrough cases, which is about 2% of those individuals who've been vaccinated. And of those breakthrough cases, those post-vaccination cases, there have been 37 have been hospitalized over the past 4 weeks, which is about 0.1% of those individuals being vaccinated. And what I'd like to do now is just share my screen to go through the booster guidance very quickly. I promise I won't spend a lot of time. It's a lot of information, and we have the information posted on our website, but we continuously encourage folks who haven't been vaccinated to get vaccinated, to receive the Pfizer, Moderna, or the Johnson & Johnson, and those individuals who are eligible to receive the third shot for those individuals who are immunocompromised, and those individuals who meet the age and criteria for receiving boosters. So I'm going to quickly go through these slides. So last week, we received authorization from the CDC and the Maryland Department of Health to begin administering third doses to those individuals who are immunocompromised or with compromised immune systems. Now, I want to make the distinguish. These are third doses for those individuals because data indicates that individuals who have compromised immune systems, the previous vaccination wane and can wane over time based on age and the immune system, which leads us to our booster shots. Pfizer recipient only at least 6 months after the second dose. Again, all of this information is posted on our website for you to review at your leisure. So individuals who are 65 and older.
Dr. Bridges, it might, if you could click the presentation mode, it might be easier for folks to, there you go.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Jawando. So these are the categories for the underlying medical condition for the individuals who are increased or at occupational institutional settings. Again, we've previously used these categories in our tiering, but because we have more vaccine in the community, we actually have 217 places and spaces, including pharmacies, our three local health department sites, as well as our primary care and urgent care setting, who are now able to administer third shots and boosters. Again, as always, please consult your primary care physician regarding any risk or contraindications based on any medication in individuals who may have underlying medical conditions or occupational health risk. So when you visit our sites or when you visit the other sites, there's no attestation. We ask you to bring your ID card. If you are unable to bring your ID card, you can go online and you can access my immunization records, my IR, and get documentation or proof of your vaccine record. We ask individuals to self-certify. We also ask individuals to receive the series of vaccines that you previously received for your first and second dose, Pfizer and Moderna. Currently, CDC does not encourage vaccines to be interchangeable. And so we've planned for the vaccines based on our current sites. We're also planning for additional sites to handle high throughput venues, which you will see on an upcoming slide. But we didn't start administering Pfizer to the community until around the end of March. So if you check your vaccine cards, you will get an indication of when you receive the second dose, plus 6 months, which would make you eligible now, especially for those individuals who are 65 and older, and for those categories that I previously mentioned. And so again, this is just a geo mapping of those areas. If you go to coronavirus.maryland.gov and you enter your zip code, you can get all of the sites per category for pharmacies, providers, urgent cares, and primary care physicians. We continue to work with our community partners, our nursing homes, our group homes, and our pharmacies to provide support to these facilities, our primary care and our minority health initiatives are paramount in supporting and reducing the transmission in the community and providing vaccines in the community. And we are expanding to East County Regional Center. We're looking at evening, weekends, and other places in East County. One potential site is East County Recreation Center, but we've heard community feedback and we're looking at other counties. I'm sorry. My apologies. My apologies for the noise distraction in the background. But nevertheless, we look at those areas that we can handle the high throughput at the Montgomery County Germantown Center, our Silver Springs Center. We also will provide support to our homebound and independent living sites as we've previously done. We are working diligently with our community partners and our agency and disability services to reach those individuals who may not have had access to vaccines as we've previously done using our equity framework. And I will stop there subject to any questions. Again, my apology for the voicemail that I couldn't stop in the background. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bridgers. No worries. Next, we have an update from the Montgomery County Public Schools on how they're working to keep our children, in the classroom safely. We have Chief of Staff Jimmy D'Andrea, Chief of Teaching, Learning, and Schools Rochelle Rubin, and Chief of Finance and Operations Jeannie Dawson. Mr. D'Andrea.
Good evening, President Hooker. I think I'm actually up first.
Hey, Ms. Rubin, thank you. Good to see you.
Good to see you. I'll take the spotlight for now.
The Zoom world we're in, yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. Thank you so much for the opportunity for us to participate in the County Council Town Hall this evening. This is a meaningful event and a fantastic opportunity for us to interface with our community members. My name is Rochelle Rubin. I'm the Chief of Teaching, Learning, and Schools for Montgomery County Public Schools. I'm also joined by my colleagues, Ms. Jeannie Dawson, Chief of Finance and Operations, and Mr. Jimmy DeAndrea, Chief of Staff. Tomorrow, September 30th, marks 1 month since we reopened our school buildings to over 160,000 students for the first time since March of 2020. And that is so significant and meaningful, as I'm sure we can all attest to. It has really been a truly amazing experience to have all of our students and our staff members back in person. And we in Montgomery County Public Schools are committed to doing everything we can to keep our students and staff safe, while we understand that we are still very much in the midst of the pandemic. Tonight, we appreciate the opportunity to briefly share a few updates related to our COVID-19 response planning. We're excited to share that in the next few days, we will officially launch a COVID-19 dashboard on our website. This dashboard will provide additional information to the community about cases in our schools, the number of students in quarantine, among a variety of other things. The dashboard will enable our community members to view current and cumulative data for schools and for the entire school system. And so with that, we're excited to begin, and I'm going to turn things over to Ms. Jeannie Dawson, Chief of Finance and Operations.
Good evening, everyone. So glad to be here. We just wanted to give you some updates on our screening testing. Remember, we launched the COVID screening testing program, which really is a partnership through the Maryland Department of Health and MCPS, and we had selected a vendor, Scion, who is a state-approved testing contractor and provides individual asymptomatic COVID testing. And our focus has been students in pre-K through 6, specifically because those students are not vaccinated. So in this program, we currently have increased out to 109 schools. We have administered 5,800 tests at this point as of September 24th. Out of those tests, we had 11 positive tests. And what we do there is we notify the administrator, and the parent is notified, and then we do contact tracing. Our goal is continuing to expand to all schools through the month of October. As we're doing that, we're expanding 7 through 12. And that is, the whole point of outreach and doing this Say Yes to the Test campaign. In this, we are outreaching to all the communities. We have worked with our PPWs and our parent community coordinators. We've reached out to our parent leaders and other organizations. We actually have on Saturday, October 9th, a partnership Say Yes Day at Paint Branch High School from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. We are partnering with Holy Cross Hospital and the Fellowship AMC Church and conducting community vaccination event. But we also will have vendors there. We will support families in consent forms, and we're really excited about this as we continue to use social media and connected and other ways to reach our community. It's so important for the safety of our students and staff. So with that, I will pass this on to my colleague, Jimmy DeAndrea, the Chief of Staff, to talk about the quarantine protocols and numbers that we have currently. Thank you.
Good evening, President Hucker and members of the council. Thank you very much for this opportunity to share this evening. We know we have a very brief opportunity to share, and so I'm just going to present one more update that we know there's been a number of questions about in recent weeks. And so the last piece of information that we would like to share with the community during this update is information about the number of individuals entering quarantine by week of the school year. So what you see on the screen right now shows the 4 weeks of school that were completed at this point. And then on the right side of the screen, you see the number of students who entered quarantine because they were considered close contacts of students who had tested positive for COVID-19. And then in the far right column, you see the number of students who entered quarantine because they were close contacts of symptomatic individuals. And you'll notice during the first week of the school year, we had more than 2,000 students who entered quarantine. And so one of our goals has been to collaborate with the Department of Health and Human Services, which has been a tremendous partner in working with MCPS, working with all of us to best support students and schools, and first and foremost, make sure that we're doing everything we can to keep students safe when they are in school. And so by partnering with them, a couple of changes have been made over the past couple of weeks, and that's why you'll see significant changes in the numbers. So if you look down at the third row for the third week of school, you'll notice that starting that week, there are no more students entering quarantine because they are close contacts of symptomatic individuals. And that's a result of the change in guidance by the Department of Health and Human Services. So that was one significant change to reduce the number of students entering quarantine. And then, in addition to that, we're very grateful to the Department of Health and Human Services for working with all of the health room staff and all 209 schools to implement rapid COVID-19 testing for students who are showing symptoms during the school day. As many community members know, all of the health room staff members are employees of the Department of Health and Human Services. We know they work tremendously hard to be able to make this possible. And as a result of their efforts and the fact that COVID-19 rapid testing is now available in all school health rooms, that has significantly reduced the number of students who have needed to enter quarantine. And as you can see, for the most recently completed week, last week, September 20th through 24th, we had 374 students who entered quarantine in comparison to more than 2,000 during the first week of school. So this is one piece of data that we're happy to celebrate. And again, we're doing everything we can to continue to reduce that number. Again, there are a lot of different pieces of information that we are monitoring to best support students in schools. Tonight, we just wanted to give a very brief update, and we thank all the members of the community for their support. And at this time, I would now like to turn it back over to President Hucker.
Jimmy, thank you so much for that update. All of you, I really appreciate the update. Thank you so much for coming before the council to update us as well. And as a parent of one of our quarantine students, I'm really grateful for the change in policy as well. Finally, we have a status report on Thrive Montgomery 2050 with the Planning and Housing and Economic Development Committee Chair Hans Riemer and analyst Pam Dunn, who can answer technical questions about the Thrive 2050 proposal.
Thank you, Council President Hucker. I'll just be very brief because I know that a number of the questions tonight will touch on Thrive issues, but we thought it might be helpful to provide a little bit of context for this discussion. You may follow, you probably don't, but you may follow the news about how we do planning, how we assign zoning, how we assess future transportation capacity, where we want to put parks and libraries, and how we set aside property for schools. We do that through a process of master plans. So over the past several years, we've done a master plan for the Veers Mill corridor, all the properties up and down Veers Mill. We've done Forest Glen, the focusing on the metro station there, but that corridor from when you're coming up off of 16th or on Georgia Avenue up to the Beltway, it's an aging, outdated place that really needs some new life. So we did a plan for Forest Glen. We've done plans for Rockville Pike and Rock Spring and Bethesda, downtown Bethesda. A lot of what you see happening in downtown Bethesda today is because we changed what could be done there in the 2016 master plan. Well, our master plans are all based on a foundational document. It's called the general plan. And the general plan is essentially a vision of planning, and it's an elucidation of planning principles to guide how we do land use. Well, we are actually ahead of the general plan. We have been implementing planning approaches that are more progressive, frankly, than the general plan, which was last updated decades ago. And it is long past time for us to refresh the general plan and catch up with what we've been doing through our master plan process. So Thrive 2050, Thrive Montgomery 2050, is a rewrite of that Montgomery County general plan. It is a vision document. It describes how we want to proceed in very general ways, but actually implementing it will only happen through subsequent master plans like those that we have passed in recent years. So some of the major goals of Thrive 2050 include economic health, equity, environmental resilience. Some of the things you will notice that are different in Thrive 2050 from what exists today. A good example is Montgomery County decided years ago that we did not want development in the East County. And our general plan does not support jobs and growth in East County. Well, we think that was a mistake, and the East County declined as a result of that. And we'd like to change that. And one of the major elements that's different in Thrive 2050 is we really, in a forward way, call for development and change and progress in the East County. The basic idea of Thrive is to focus our growth in our corridors, the 270 corridor, the 29 corridor, to continue to redevelop land and property that was previously developed. So it's smart growth to prioritize to prioritize walking and public transportation, in addition to vehicle transportation that is, of course, the mainstay for many people. So it preserves the agricultural reserve just as you see it today, but it calls for making it more accessible to the community through different kinds of supporting uses. So in a way, I would say that the general plan doesn't change a whole lot because we're already doing the kinds of progressive thinking in our plans that it calls for. But on the other hand, I think it's important to really memorialize and update the foundational document of our planning program. There's been a lot of controversy about housing, and Thrive has a view on housing that we should have more types of housing throughout the county. But it does not change any zoning. And any actual change on housing types would have to come through a future document, a future plan, which we hope to take up very soon. But Thrive does not do that. So it's important to distinguish those two. So I think that's a little bit of background for our discussion tonight. And I know several of the questions will touch on it, and we'll get into it additionally then. Thanks very much. Oh, I should say the Fed committee is presently working through Thrive. We should be done in the next few weeks, and the full council will work through and adopt Thrive before the end of the calendar year. Thanks.
Thanks, Chairman Reamer. There's a lot of interest in this. We have a lot of questions about it. Can you just clarify again? Does Thrive 2050 overrule any existing master plans?
It does not. It does not change any zoning. It does not change any, existing policies or plans. Well, it's very general. It's an approach to planning, and it is very consistent with the decades-long vision of smart growth in the county, which was, let's have an agricultural reserve. Let's have quarter cities, Clarksburg, Germantown, Gaithersburg, Rockville, Bethesda, Silver Spring. It stays true to that core vision that has made Montgomery County what it is, but it has some new creative thinking to help us do a better job with it.
And the last general plan was updated, and my understanding is 1993. Is that correct?
And that was just a partial update. We're really working off the more fundamental version, which is from the 60s. So a lot has changed.
That's what I thought. Okay, just wanted to reassure everyone. Thank you so much for elaborating on that, and I know we'll have many questions on this. Now I want to turn it over to Susan Kennedy, who will moderate the question and answer portion of the meeting with questions coming live from residents, and we'll have many Q&A. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. If I can get my video to start, that would be helpful. We do have a lot of folks whose names we don't see next to their icon, so we're going to be calling out some names. And if you are one of those people who is here to ask a question, you're not labeled, please raise your hand and we will unmute you so you can ask your question. Do we have Trishna Day here? Is Trishna here with us tonight? She has a question and we'll see if she raises her hand. I don't see.
Hey, Susan, I'm just wondering, I don't want to change the agenda, but my guess is even if Trishna is delayed, a lot of folks might benefit from the answer to her question.
Absolutely.
As I understand it, the answer to her question, her question that she submitted online was, how do people get actively involved as a representative of the diversity that's prevalent in Montgomery County? And I think that's a great question.
I see Speaker E raised their hand, so I'm wondering if that might be Krishna Day. So can we see if this is her and let her ask her question to the council members, please? And while we're waiting, just a couple of quick housekeeping remarks here. We have Vicky Garcia with us from Representative John Sarbanes' office, and we also have Karen Hendricks for Christopher Van Hollen's office from his office. We want to thank them both for being with us tonight and listening in on the residents' concerns. It's much appreciated when you take that information back to your offices and share it with them. We appreciate you being here tonight. Do we have Trishna? Okay, well, who would like to take that question about getting actively involved? Ms. Navarro.
Ms. Navarro, thank you.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you for that question. It's a very important one.
Yes.
You know, as I reflect on my own involvement before I ever ran for office, I thought I would. I really began, of course, getting involved in my children's schools, and that was really my entree into being involved in my community. The county has a lot of different ways. You can either, of course, join your civic association. We have regional services centers that have a lot of really amazing advisory groups. That is one way to also be involved. It is also really important to follow what your local leaders are doing. And so for that, the county council in particular, you know, streams all of our meetings, committee meetings. We have a lot of boards and commissions also in the county that, you know, if they align with your area of interest, you can do that. If you need to speak to your representatives or your council members, you know, you can just call us or email us. Many people tweet at us. Really, we have done everything possible to make ourselves accessible, but we've also enhanced our communications office. And that's why you have, for example, now subtitles, and we have a lot of multilingual capacity because we want to make sure that our structures are welcoming to all the residents of the county, especially those who may not be English dominant or are not familiar. So there are so many different ways that you can be involved. Of course, we also have amazing community-based organizations that are working really hard to provide support to our residents. And we have these organic community hubs that really were stood up during the pandemic that always need help. And I think that is another really amazing way to understand what's happening in the community, to get involved and make a difference. So there are just a lot of very many different ways, but most certainly I know that I find that the work that the council has done to be available, to be transparent, to make sure that things like tonight, that we are offering these types of settings, you know, that is another way to begin to to familiarize yourself with what is happening and also give us your opinion, regardless of whether you are an expert or regardless of whether you are English dominant. We're here to make and facilitate that involvement for you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Navarro. That's wonderful. Do we have Carolyn Lampilla here? Are you any of our speakers who is unidentified that we could bring you on to ask your question? Her question is about Vision Zero. And while we're waiting to see if she is here, I don't see a hand go up. The question is, given the recent pedestrian and bicyclist casualties, what is the county doing to accelerate Vision Zero and prioritize safety? I know the council president would like to answer that, as well as Councilmember Glass.
Thanks, Susan. Yes, I have a lot of opinions on this. So it's a great question. We received an update from the executive branch's Vision Zero coordinator several months ago. And we've been told about several pedestrian and cyclist safety plans that are being studied. One includes focuses on safe routes to school countywide, and we have several bike lane projects across the county that are in the queue. Most recently, we coordinated with the State Highway Administration to create bike lanes on University Boulevard that many people have seen between Wheaton and Northwood High School. So it's terrific that you can bike between Northwood High School all the way to Wheaton in a protected bike lane now. But unfortunately, we have a large gap in our capital budget that we received from the county executive last year. So we also need to raise revenue. And I think almost all of the neighbors I talk to and the constituents I talk to are always for more bike lanes and more sidewalks. But that costs money. We have to re-engineer a county that was largely designed in the 1920s and the 1930s, the 1940s and 50s. So I'll tell you, I live in a house that was built in 1946, and it needs a lot of updates. And so does Montgomery County. I'm often not happy when I talk to a contractor about what it takes to update my house. But if I don't spend the money now, I'm going to spend more money later. I'm not happy with what it costs, but I'm willing to pay because we need to update my house, and we also need to update Montgomery County to re-engineer it for more pedestrian traffic and more bike traffic. So we have a county that works for everyone, not just for those of us who are privileged enough to have a car. So we have to pay for our bike paths. We have to pay for our sidewalks because they cost a fair amount of money. We're lucky enough to have a very professional, nonpartisan planning department that's already planned out a bike master plan, and they're working on a pedestrian master plan. And I'm really eager as the chair of the Transportation Committee to move that forward as quickly as possible, because 90% of the emails I receive on this topic are people asking for more sidewalks and more bike paths. We just have to sort of get to the other side where we all have choices about how we move ourselves to our local errands and to get our kids to school, and not just be forced to drive, even if it's only for a few blocks. Councilmember Glass?
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President. I appreciate your leadership on the Transportation and Environment Committee, and I appreciate Carolyn asking the question. And the simple and unfortunate truth is that last year during the pandemic, we know that there were less people on the roads because so many people will be able to work from home. But in the year 2020, there were 501 pedestrians and cyclists injured in traffic collisions on our own roads. And in addition to that, 18 people died as a result of those incidents. And that is absolutely and completely unacceptable, which is why we need to do a better job of implementing our Vision Zero goals and aim to have vision zero deaths by the year 2030. We have a 32-point plan, which Council President Hucker started elaborating on with the hiring finally of a Vision Zero coordinator. But, I'll say in brief, if there was a silver lining to the last 18 months, it was our ability to rethink how we use our streets, from converting numerous roads in the county to spaces for cyclists, pedestrians, and restaurants. I think those are the trends that we need to continue moving forward so that we do not have any more incidents or fatalities on our roads, and that our streets are safe for drivers, bicyclists, and pedestrians. Thank you, Mr. President.
Absolutely. Back to you, Susan.
Thank you very much. Our next question comes from Angela Nira. Angela is with us, so we will bring her on board and let her ask her question. She has a question in Spanish. Hi, Angela.
Hi. Buenas noches a todos. He tenido la oportunidad de trabajar con pequeños empresarios por 12 años en Montgomery County. Y mi pregunta es muy puntual. He visto la necesidad. Diana, just let me know when you need to start translating, okay? Just
no se preocupe. Sure. Okay. What you have to say. No se preocupe.
Okay. So he visto la necesidad. La comunidad latina de empresarios ha crecido muchísimo en los últimos años. Pero desafortunadamente todavía sigo viendo que en las oficinas de Montgomery County, cuando hablamos de la oficina de permisos, de licencias, de asistencia técnica de procurement, no tenemos a nadie que hable español y definitivamente es una necesidad que yo la veo, que nuestra comunidad la tiene. Y me gustaría preguntarle a los concejales si hay alguna posibilidad de que ustedes revisen que podamos asignar más recursos para que nuestra comunidad pueda tener una mejor atención en su propio idioma.
Good evening. I work with small business, and I've been doing that for the past 12 years. We have a large number of small businesses in Montgomery County, and this permits, and I'm seeing that the permits and licenses and procurement processes that the county provides are not available through a Spanish-speaking interface. So my question is it possible for the county to provide licenses and permits and support this, guide and support businesses in a way that is available to Spanish speakers? Are you planning to include bilingual staff? And when will the websites for the licenses and permits and procurement be made available in Spanish?
I can start by just saying that I think, and I'll translate into Spanish. I think that what Angela is raising is really important. And Angela, thank you for all the work that you do, especially with the micro enterprises. It's really important because it really speaks to the fact that Montgomery County government has to respond to the needs of the residents that it serves. And that means that we have to respond to the fact that we have a very large community that is Spanish speaking, just like we have, for example, a large community that is Amharic speaking. We have a multilingual community. And so it is going to be important, not just to, I think, add more resources, but to be intentional about, the capacity that we are building within the departments, especially in key departments. I know that I push very hard for the Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation to have a position there for small businesses, somebody who is bilingual, and we have Daniel Parra, who is there, for example. But I agree with you, and I think that this is something that, of course, I know council members are very committed. We will relay this information to the executive, who obviously is responsible for making sure that they're hiring the type of capacity that is necessary. But this is something that, it will take a little bit of time, I think, to go through this organizational cultural change. And that is why the racial equity and social justice law is also very important, because this notion of having multilingual, culturally proficient capacity is very critical. Entonces, lo que estaba diciendo era eso, de que tenemos que reconocer como líderes de que el condado ha cambiado muchísimo y que esta comunidad en particular ha crecido mucho. Entonces hay ciertos departamentos que son claves donde deberían de tener ya capacidad bilingüe, y vamos a trabajar con el Ejecutivo, quien es responsable por ese tipo de capacidad, y por eso es que la ley de equidad racial y justicia social que yo impulsé es tan importante, porque eso requiere que este condado, este gobierno responda a las necesidades de sus residentes. Y en este caso, la comunidad latina, que ha crecido tanto, como vimos en el censo, necesita ese tipo de personal que le pueda dar ese tipo de apoyo, de manera que sea proficiente culturalmente y también lingüísticamente. Así que gracias, Ángela, por todo lo que hace por nuestras microempresas.
Gracias a ustedes.
Thank you very much. Our next question tonight is from Jane Lyons. Jane, you're up. I saw her there. Okay, well, I don't see her there now. How about Febe Hernandez? Febe, are you there?
Yes.
Hi, how are you tonight?
I'm good.
Please.
Buenas noches. Mi nombre es Febe Hernández. Soy una madre de la escuela Rolling Terras y miembro del proyecto cívico latino. Mi pregunta es, ¿qué se puede hacer para evitar el tráfico y la falta de estacionamientos que están causando los trabajos públicos que se están realizando en la calle University Boulevard, Pioneer Branch, Barrow Street y otras calles cercanas a nuestra escuela, sobre todo en las horas de la mañana, y la falta de áreas de estacionamientos, ya que están poniendo ticket a los maestros y algunos padres. ¿Sería posible que trabajen en horas que no nos afecten?
Good evening. Good evening. I'm a mother, and of the Rolling Hills School, and also a member of the Civic Latino.
Rolling Terrace.
Rolling Terrace. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Rolling Terrace.
I think
Wrong geography. Thank you. My question is this: what can be done to avoid the traffic, or about the traffic and the lack of parking caused by the public projects on University Avenue, University Boulevard, Piney Branch, Barron Street, and other nearby streets that are near our school, especially in the mornings? There's a lack of parking and causing us teachers and parents to get ticketed by the police. Would it be possible for this public work to be done at hours that don't affect us? Thank you.
yes. Thank you so much, Diane. Thank you, Febe, for your question. Febe, I think your children go to the same school as my children go to at Rolling Terrace. I'm in the same traffic every day on University and Piney Branch, and my pre-K provider was on Barron Street. So I was on the same. Now, thankfully, they're repaving the roads on Barron Street and Bayfield and many other streets in the Rolling Terrace neighborhood that we've asked for years. I agree with you that we should try to direct the contractor to do the work when there's not rush hour traffic going to the school and coming from the school. So I think my staff are on here, and I will talk to the Montgomery County Department of Transportation tomorrow about restricting those hours. Generally, people in the neighborhood, most neighborhoods don't want the construction happening at night because of the noise, but we can try and restrict it to the hours in the middle of the day between the rush hour periods during the day. And we can talk to State Highway about restricting the construction on University Boulevard and Piney Branch, which are state roads, at rush hour as well. Thank you so much. It sounds like you're a neighbor, and I'm in the same traffic every day, and we're going to try and address that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We have Jane Lyons back. So Jane, hello, how are you this evening? Go ahead and ask your question. She was having some technical difficulties. Maybe those are back. Okay, we're going to move on to our next person. We have Dr. Drana Valentine, who is here to ask a question as well. Dr. Valentine, welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Good evening. Thank you, members of the council, for taking my question tonight. I hope I'm still on. I can't tell.
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. So my question tonight is, how does the council ensure equity concerns are considered when meeting the diverse needs of the county? Thank you.
It's a great question, Councilmember. It's very broad. Councilmember Rice, Councilmember Novato, do you want to jump in? I feel like I'm doing a lot of talking.
So let me just start off, and I really want to thank Councilmember Navarro, because in her leadership role in guiding the council through racial equity and social justice laws that were put in place to ensure that we now weave in to every decision that we make, whether it's zoning, whether it's budgetary. We have all of those analyzed by our Office of Racial Equity and Social Justice to make sure that we're actually adhering to those policies and making sure that we're undoing some of the systemic racism that we've seen that's got us in the position that we have, that's created some of the inequities that we're experiencing. But it goes far beyond that. It has now shaped us. All of our staff have gone through racial equity and social justice training. That includes both the staff that work for the council as well as department heads. And that's given us a really different perspective in terms of how it is we analyze. I was on the phone with Councilmember Navarro the other day, and we were talking about something, and I paused and I said, wait a minute, we're going to actually cause something else to happen. And I can't remember exactly what it was, but I highlighted the fact that we now think completely differently because of the training that we've received. So it's not just about the racial equity and social justice law that's in place, but it also is about the training. I would encourage as many people as possible, regardless of whether you're a person of color or not, to take this training, because it certainly does highlight some of the implicit biases, but also makes you aware of so many of the things that you just take for granted as you make decisions. And it certainly helped us, I think, as an entire council, as an entire county, to make better decisions that truly reflect undoing some of the inequities that we've seen in our past. And I'll just close with this. I'm very happy to see that our school system has embraced this as well, something in which education is so important to the future generations. And so certainly from that perspective, undoing some of that at the educational level is incredibly important as well. So our teachers, staff, administrators, all embarking on this journey together is going to make us an even stronger community, one that starts to make and turn the tide when it comes to some of the challenges that we face. But I do just want to remind folks that, again, this is something that happened over hundreds of years. It's not going to be solved in just a year or two as well. This is something that's going to take continued work and continued time for us to truly address.
I would just add, Dr. Valentine, that one of the important aspects of what we did here collectively, and during my presidency in 2019, I led the charge, but it was really a collective effort, is that this is now a law. And so it does force all the elected officials, all the decision makers, to make structural changes and to look at data. And that was important to me because Montgomery County is known for having invested a lot of money to eliminate disparities, except that when you look throughout the years, you see that the disparities have not necessarily gone away. Some have actually been exacerbated. And I think that's because we have to be methodical, we have to be structural, we have to be strategic. But we also have to invest in the capacity for this to work. And so we have already invested over $1 million in creating an office and creating, and hiring staff and making sure we have the capacity, because some jurisdictions now have put forth equity policy officers, and they've sort of said, let's check the box, we're done. Everything that has to do with equity, the equity officer will deal with. Well, that's impossible because of what Councilmember Rice just mentioned. We're talking about systemic and historic institutionalized racism that has then given way to some of the most incredible disparities that now with the pandemic we saw front and center. So I think this is really important work, and it's going to be up to the future leaders here in Montgomery County to make sure that they continue to support this and build this capacity and be true and authentic, because if we don't do this, our county will not be able to prosper. It will not be able to be as strong as we wanted it to be. Thank you for that question.
Thank you.
Yeah, Dr. Valentine, I would only add, there are temporary changes that you make during the budget, and there's permanent changes you make in legislation. And we've done that in regards to equity. And I'm really happy about that. I'm not saying we're done and we have a perfect system, but it was transformative, the work that Councilmember Navarro led when she was council president a couple of years ago. And now we have staff in place, and we have a legislative commitment to, for example, conduct a racial equity study and a social justice study of all proposed legislation and all of our budget proposals, and look at those proposals through that lens, which is, it's groundbreaking, it's transformative, it's groundbreaking. And now we have, when I used to serve in Annapolis in the General Assembly, and someone a long time ago required us to have a small business analysis that considers every single proposal, and they have 3,000 a year, through the lens of whether it would help or hurt small business. Well, we don't have that. We have the amazing, requirement now to look at everything through the lens of racial equity and social justice. And that's a sea change in policymaking. In the 15 years I've been doing policymaking, that's really transformative. So that's in place and it's permanent. And we have staff hired to do those analyses, and the executive branch has those staff in place as well. And so that informs all of us, because none of us have all the answers. We're all making decisions on the fly with limited information and our own lived experience. But having that kind of analysis is fantastic, and that's permanent. And that's because of Councilmember Navarro, and it's in place. And, there's other ways probably to improve it in the future, but we've never analyzed and considered legislation, in my experience, the way we do in the last year and a half, as compared to how we did things previously, because everything is changed. That's a really groundswell, a completely transformative change. So that's in place. And, we want feedback. There's no reason you can't talk to our analysts and bring in feedback, and community advocates can do that as well, because we make the best decisions when we hear from the most people.
Right. Could I make a brief comment on that one? I'll be very brief. Thank you, Dr. Valentine. The other thing that's important to ensure equity is the public, is you, and everyone that's on this call. There have been 43 bills analyzed under this racial equity and social justice law, which is a absolutely transformational and awesome process and law that we have in place. Our staff has done those reports. 3 of those bills have been deemed to have a negative impact on racial equity. 2 of the 3 have been passed despite the negative impact. And then 20 of the 43 have had no impact, positive or negative, on racial equity, which means they maintain the current inequities that are in place, or, it's kind of a draw, right? And so we need to continue to hear, if we have to act on the information, and the public has to hold us accountable to acting on the information. And 18 of those bills have a positive impact on racial equity, and about 7 of those have been passed, right? And so there's bills that in every stage that have been introduced that will be positive, that either waiting or not passed, some that would be negative that were passed. And there needs to be an accountability mechanism from the public. The public plays a huge role in ensuring that we do what we need to do to ensure equity. So it's a great question, and appreciate your advocacy and all your work.
Right.
And to be accurate about the process, I think most of those bills were actually amended because of the racial equity analysis that we were privileged enough to have in front of us. So
that's what I was going to add, and I appreciate that. I think it's important to be transparent that it is true that many of them have been sent forward with that kind of analysis, but they have been amended. Some of them actually have been even strengthened further. We just passed a bill that gives particular incentives to make sure that we make our buildings existing in future more environmentally friendly. And what we did with that was to say, hey, you know what? We need to look at equity emphasis areas, and let's add an additional incentive to even make it stronger. And so part of the process of legislating is that you have to look at ways to amend or to add or to shift some of the things included in the original bill to get us closer to that place. And but it is absolutely important that the public continue to stay involved.
Yeah,
I appreciate all the answers. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. No bill comes in perfect, and no bill goes out perfect. But the whole reason we do the analysis is to improve the bill, and that's working.
We appreciate that. Thank you, Council members.
Ms. Kennedy, go ahead.
Yes, Patricia Johnson is next. Ms. Johnson, sorry we skipped by you. It is your turn, and I know you're there. So thanks for being here tonight.
Thanks for including me. I appreciate it. We know that Thrive is a vision, but we also know it's implemented by ZTA, zoning text amendments. The Citizens Coordinating Committee on Friendship Heights has circulated a petition that has gotten almost 2,000 signatures within a few weeks' time. It asks, will the County Council establish community advisory groups to facilitate input concerning new zoning that will affect their neighborhoods? And will the council mandate that all rezoning that will implement Thrive and allow multifamily housing types in single-family neighborhoods use traditional master and sector plan processes in order to avoid a one-size-fits-all approach? This petition is going to keep going, and there is an upcoming election. A big concern is that people don't feel they've been included in this vision that will affect where they live. The process has not been clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Chairman Reamer.
Hi, Patricia. It's good to see you again. Sorry, I thought one of my colleagues was going to answer that question, but I'm happy to take it. So first of all, I'm not sure. I think I know you know that Thrive does not make any changes in zoning.
No.
And, as far as Thrive itself goes with housing, it espouses a lot of views about housing that are, very consistent with every plan that we've worked on for the last 15 years. And really, are policies that people will should feel very familiar with. But on the specific question of, single family zoning, which has been the I've got emails pouring into my inbox right now asserting that Thrive changes single family zoning, for example, in Edgemoor. Thrive doesn't change anything. Thrive simply says that we should have more flexibility about what types of structures are built. And, that generally speaking, we need to be a little bit more creative with our housing if we're going to make this county equitable and sustainable and successful. How we will actually implement that ideal will be left to future other kinds of policy changes, zoning text amendments, master plans, and the like. So right now we actually have examples of both that are in the midst of a process. In other words, Councilmember Jawando has introduced a zoning text amendment to the County Council that is a very strong proposal. We asked the Planning Board to spend some time working through it and get more community feedback on it. Take Councilmember Jawando's idea as well as a different version of a different version of that idea that I had been working on, and try to come up with their recommendations for what we ought to do. That is presently at the Planning Board and will come to the County Council as a recommendation of the Planning Board very soon. The Silver Spring Master Plan is also in the midst of its community process, and it's taking up similar issues through that process. So there are lots of different ways that we will tackle housing, but to be clear, Thrive does not make changes in zoning. It will not cause any changes. Those changes, will be considered in future policymaking processes, and it will be, and those will be before the council in the future, but they're not Thrive.
Okay, I just want to make sure that citizens are involved in advisory capacities.
Thank you. I thank you for repeating that, Patricia. Ms. Johnson, I should say, but we know each other, so I call you Patricia. I hope you don't mind. Yeah, my candid answer to that is what the planning board is for us. The planning department and the planning board convenes a very full process of community engagement, and we rely upon them to do most of the community engagement, and then we have to kind of smooth out the wrinkles or polish the finish when it comes to the county council. By and large, it's not always that simple, but I don't think it would be wise for the county council to try to build a replica of the planning process that we have chartered the planning board and their 100 plus staff to actually manage. So I do think that the way we do it now is a good way, because it keeps the temperature down. It allows the community to be engaged with professional planners, and everybody can kind of work within that process together and send us their best result.
Well, okay. I'll take it up with the planning board then. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly add, we did, from the original process that was set forward, there were a number of meetings that were going to happen in July. Those meetings have been extended considerably into the fall to take a more deliberative approach, to take more time diving into each of these issues, the process of which the committee is doing now. So the community concerns that have been shared, they've certainly been heard, and the process has changed as a result. It may not be to the extent that you're looking for and some of your advocacy is suggesting, but certainly from the meeting schedule as it was originally put forward to where we are now, the process has slowed down. We are taking more time on these issues than perhaps was originally suggested. So I just thought that should be noted as well.
Thank you. I think the third time might be a charm for Jane Lyons. She's supposed to be on the line now. Jane, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Hi, Jane.
Hello, I'm now a panelist, so I can, hopefully you can see and hear me. My name is Jane Lyons. I'm with the Coalition for Smarter Growth and Montgomery for All. I'm also a renter in downtown Silver Spring. We're very supportive of the vision that's laid out in Thrive for more sustainable, inclusive neighborhoods, and support all the reasons for why housing in the right places is important. But we also believe that the language could be a lot stronger around the need, and sorry, I'm talking about Thrive 2050, about the need to invest in subsidized, income-restricted housing, especially in wealthier neighborhoods that have high access to jobs, to transit, and other amenities that help to make for a high quality of life and access to opportunity. And to that end, the first draft of Thrive talked about embracing housing as a human right. So my question is whether the council would be supportive of adding that language back in, and also then support subsequent language in Thrive that brings that value into practice. Thank you.
I'm happy to take that one.
Yeah, let me pass it to my colleague here. He's equally able to answer these questions, as well as Councilmember Jawanda.
Appreciate it. So first of all, Jane, thanks for the question. A couple things. One, we're taking up the language right now. So that is certainly exactly what we're doing. I think I'll start where you ended, which is putting those ideas into practice. And I think this council, really frankly, building off and doubling down on the efforts that the prior council had done, has really put a lot of those issues into practice. 15% NPDU as the standard, as the baseline in the most affluent parts of the county, the groundbreaking housing opportunity fund that we worked on at the Fed committee and the GO committee that I jointly get to participate in and spent about a year and a half trying to figure out how we could better leverage limited public resources in order to supercharge our affordable housing efforts. I could go on and on and on talking about the commitment that this council has made specifically on reaching our housing targets and in achieving our COG goals. And I think we've made more progress on housing perhaps in the last 3 years, despite being in the middle of a pandemic, than the county has ever made when it comes to subsidized housing. And yet we all recognize that we haven't done enough, we're not doing enough, and there's a lot more that needs to be done. So I think if you want to judge what our commitments are, look at what we've done. And I think this council's commitments to affordable housing, particularly in investing in it with precious tax dollars, and also in making policy changes in order to facilitate it. Certainly we have used all the powers that we have in order to accelerate that.
including in individual master plans. In terms of the specific language, that's what we're taking up now, and I think you're going to see changes that we're going to make on a number of issues, and certainly housing, which has been a priority for this council and everything that we've done. It will be a key priority for us as we finish up the Thrive markup.
Thank you, Mr. Friedtson. We only have a few minutes left, but I'd like to get one more question in quickly with one answer, if we could do that. Paul Geller is here, and he has a question about redistricting. I know a lot of people are wondering about that, and maybe he can get some answers here tonight. Paul, how are you?
Good. Thank you very much, and thank you, council members. When will the final vote on redistricting take place, and who has the final say on where the borders are drawn?
Any takers?
The silence is deafening.
It's not deafening. Does the chair of the Government Operations Committee want to jump in, or should I jump in?
Sure. My understanding is that the council is going to receive the final proposals, I believe, November 15th. And then the council will deliberate. Obviously, it is going to be very important for the council to follow the particular established guidelines that will ensure that we have a redistricting that stays true to things like, for example, keeping communities of interest together, obviously balancing out the number of residents, which is so important, and another host of guidelines that the Redistricting Commission has been following. That is going to be very important. Now, this particular process, I have to say that I so much appreciate the Redistricting Commission, because this is historic. I mean, they are not just doing what has to happen every 10 years. They have to add two additional council districts. So this just makes this process a very different from last process in other times where you were just looking at balancing the growth in population, et cetera. Parking Planning did make a presentation to the county council where we started to see the latest census results, and we've seen growth, definitely growth in the mid part of the county. And so I'm sure that the members of the Redistricting Commission are taking all of that into consideration as they deliberate, and then the maps will, one or two maps will come to the county council, and then we'll have to take those decisions, et cetera. So that rests, the final word rests with the county council. And I see that we do have the chair and I believe the vice chair, Ms. Cordier, as well.
Chairwoman Cordier, you want to chime in?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that this has been a really unprecedented time for the Commission on Redistricting because, not only are we adding 2 districts, but we're doing it during a pandemic where we can't necessarily meet in the same room like past commissions have had the advantage of doing. But we have, I think, overcome some of these challenges by, doing it virtually and maximizing the time that we have with really getting up to date with and knowing, all of us through presentations, what our ground rules need to be. We developed them based on the law and we're following the charter. And so, and we've managed to be very, the commission is made up of Republicans, Democrats, Independents, and we've all really been coming together and working together. So I think at the end of the day, the largest limitation hasn't been the pandemic, and it hasn't been the other, issues of adding 2 districts, but more the challenge has been getting the census information because it was delivered late. So, now we're, working hard and diligently to get this done, and we will deliver the maps on time. We're on track to the county council, and then the county council can decide and choose what it needs to do. And I know they'll have public input. We're having public input towards the end of October. So if you have any concerns, you're welcome to participate at that meeting, and all our information and meetings, I believe, are on the website on the county council Redistricting Commission web. So you can see our slides, you can see the information, and we really do encourage and accept as much public participation as possible. And I really appreciate the County Council, entrusting this to us, to the 11 commissioners who are volunteers and are taking this very seriously and doing the best that we can.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Wonderful. Well,
President Cordier, you absolutely are under very difficult circumstances. Your expertise is showing. Thank you so much to you and Mr. Edmonds and everybody on the commission for doing such a great job. I also understand the council will hold, you mentioned the public input. The public can have input into your public hearing. We're also going to have a public hearing at the council level, and then we have to take action before our holiday break. So before Christmas and Hanukkah, we'll definitely be taking action on this. So people should get their feedback into your public hearing or to ours, correct?
That's correct.
I'm sorry, I muted myself. Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Terrific. Well, we are out of time. Unfortunately, I know a lot of folks didn't get to ask their questions, but we will be getting back to you with some answers. I want to thank everybody from MCPS, HHSS, and all the other folks who joined us tonight to tune in and listen. And Council President Hucker, I'm going to turn it over to you for a final goodbye.
Well, thanks so much to you, Susan. Thanks to all the residents and special guests that joined us tonight, and my council colleagues for joining us tonight. For those of you, again, as Susan mentioned it, but if you didn't get to ask your question, we thank you for your patience. We'll make sure to get back to you with an answer for your question. And if anybody has follow-up questions, please contact my office or to your own district council member. We're all here to assist you. We want to continue to hear from you. Please make sure to tune into tomorrow's Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee and Transportation Environment Committee meetings and the council meetings every Tuesday on County Cable Montgomery, Facebook, and YouTube. Please enjoy the rest of your evening. We look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Recording stopped.
That has had long-term effects, but it's not just the effects it's had, it's